The Hartwell mansion stood like a monument to wealth and power in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side. Its limestone facade gleamed under the morning sun, and through its tall windows, one could glimpse crystal chandeliers and priceless artwork. To anyone passing by, it looked like the home of a fairy tale romance. But fairy tales, Emma Bradford had learned, were just stories people told themselves to sleep better at night. Emma sat at the edge of the king-sized bed in her private suite, staring at her reflection in the ornate mirror across the room. 28 years old, with chestnut hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders and green eyes that once sparkled with hope, she barely recognized herself anymore. For years of marriage had transformed her from an optimistic young woman into someone who had mastered the art of existing without truly living. The sound of a door closing echoed through the hallway. James was leaving for work. As always, he had woken at exactly 5 in the morning, showered in his own bathroom, dressed in one of his impeccable suits, and departed without a single word to his wife. Emma did not bother going to see him off anymore. That ritual had died 2 years ago when she finally accepted that her presence meant nothing to him. James Hartwell was everything society expected a billionaire to be. At 33, he had taken his family's already successful real estate empire and expanded it into a global powerhouse. His sharp jawline, steel gray eyes, and commanding presence made him a fixture in business magazines and society pages. Women wanted him, men wanted to be him, and Emma just wanted him to see her. Their marriage had been arranged by their families. The Bradfords, old money with political connections, and the Hartwells, new money with business acumen. It was meant to be the perfect union. Emma remembered standing at the altar 4 years ago, looking into James's eyes and hoping that maybe, just maybe, affection could grow between them. She had been naive enough to believe in possibilities. On their wedding night, James had made everything clear. He opened the door to a beautifully decorated bedroom and gestured inside. "This will be your room. Mine is down the hall. We will maintain separate spaces. I will handle all financial matters. You will handle social obligations. This arrangement benefits both our families. Let us keep it professional." Professional. That word had haunted Emma for 1,460 days. Emma rose from the bed and walked to the window, pulling back the heavy silk curtains. The city sprawled before her, full of life and movement. She had everything money could buy. Closets full of designer clothes, jewelry that could fund a small nation, cars she never drove, and art she never enjoyed. But she did not have the one thing that mattered. She did not have a husband who cared whether she existed. She spent her days much like any other day. Breakfast alone in a dining room that could seat 20. Reading in the library where thousands of books collected dust. Sometimes she painted in the sunroom, losing herself in colors and shapes that expressed what words could not. In the evenings, if James came home at all, they might share a silent dinner before retreating to their separate worlds. Emma had tried in the beginning. She had learned his favorite foods and attempted to cook despite having staff who could do it better. She had waited up for him, hoping for conversation. She had dressed carefully for the few social events they attended together, seeking a compliment that never came. But every effort was met with polite indifference, and eventually, her hope withered like flowers without water. This particular morning felt different somehow. As Emma descended the marble staircase to the main floor, she made a decision. She would not spend another day waiting for James to notice her. She would find purpose outside these walls, even if her husband never looked her way. The charity gala 2 weeks later was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Emma wore a deep emerald gown that complemented her eyes, her hair swept up elegantly. She arrived with James, his hand barely touching her back as they entered, more for show than affection. The moment they crossed the threshold, he was surrounded by business associates and admirers. Emma drifted to the side, as she always did, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. She studied the artwork on display, losing herself in a painting of a stormy sea when a warm voice interrupted her thoughts. "Beautiful, is it not?" The way the artist captured both the danger and the allure of the ocean. Emma turned to find a man in his early 40s standing beside her. He had kind eyes and a genuine smile that reached them. His tuxedo was well-tailored but not ostentatious, and he held himself with quiet confidence rather than arrogance. "It is remarkable," Emma agreed softly. "You can almost feel the spray of the waves." "I am David Monroe," he extended his hand. "I do not believe we have met." "Emma Hartwell." She shook his hand, surprised by the warmth of human contact. It had been so long since anyone had approached her with simple friendliness. "Hartwell," David's eyes showed recognition. "You are married to James." "I have worked with him on several development projects. He is brilliant but rather intense." Emma smiled politely, giving the response she had perfected over 4 years. "He is very dedicated to his work." "And you?" David asked, surprising her with his genuine interest. "What are you dedicated to?" The question caught Emma off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked about her interests, her passions, her dreams? She found herself talking about her love of art, her degree in art history that she had never used, and her secret wish to create programs that brought art education to underprivileged children. David listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own involvement in educational philanthropy. Their conversation flowed naturally, and for the first time in years, Emma felt seen. Not as James Hartwell's wife, not as a Bradford heir, but as Emma, a person with thoughts and dreams worth hearing. Across the room, James was discussing a potential merger when his eyes wandered, searching for Emma out of habit. He spotted her immediately. She was laughing at something a man was saying, her whole face lit up in a way James had never seen before. The man leaned in closer, clearly captivated by whatever Emma was sharing. Something hot and uncomfortable twisted in James's chest. He excused himself from his conversation and found his feet carrying him toward his wife before his mind caught up with his actions. "Emma." His voice came out harder than intended. She turned, the light in her eyes dimming slightly. "James. This is David Monroe. We were discussing art education initiatives." "Monroe." James nodded curtly, stepping closer to Emma in a way that clearly marked territory. "I need to speak with my wife." David, perceptive enough to read the tension, smiled graciously. "Of course. Emma, I would love to continue our conversation another time. Perhaps you would be willing to consult on a project I am developing." Before Emma could respond, James's hand closed around her elbow. "My wife has a very full schedule." Emma's eyes flashed with something James had never seen before. Anger. "Actually, I would be happy to discuss it with you, David. You have my contact information." She pulled her arm free from James's grip. David nodded and moved away, leaving the couple standing in tense silence among the circulating guests. "What was that about?" Emma's voice was low but fierce. "I could ask you the same question. Accepting private meetings with strange men? David Monroe is hardly a stranger. He is your business associate. And unlike some people, he treats me like I have a brain worth consulting." "Emma." James's jaw tightened. "No, James. You do not get to ignore me for 4 years and then suddenly act possessive when someone shows me basic human kindness." She walked away, leaving James standing alone, his heart pounding with emotions he had spent years suppressing. For the first time since their wedding day, James Hartwell felt something that terrified him even more than vulnerability. He felt the possibility of losing something he had convinced himself he did not want. The possibility of losing Emma. Productive. "David offered me a consulting position. I accepted." James set down the pen he had been gripping. "Emma, I do not think you understand what you are doing." "I understand perfectly. I am choosing to have a life beyond these walls. Monroe is interested in more than your consulting skills." Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what this is about? You think David has ulterior motives? Even if he did, why would it matter to you? You have made it abundantly clear that you have no interest in me as a wife." James stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "That is not true. Really? Emma's voice rose with 4 years of suppressed emotion. Then explain to me, James. Explain why you have never touched me. Why you have never shared a meal with me unless we had an audience. Why you have never asked about my day, my thoughts, my feelings. Why you married me at all if you find my presence so unbearable. I never said I found you unbearable. You did not have to say it. Your actions spoke perfectly clearly. Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Do you know what it feels like to be invisible to your own husband? To live in the same house and feel completely alone? I have spent 4 years trying to understand what I did wrong, what was so terrible about me that you could not even pretend to care. Emma, stop. James moved around the desk, but she held up a hand. No, you stop. Stop pretending this is a real marriage. Stop pretending you have any right to be jealous when another man shows me basic human decency. You do not get to have it both ways, James. Either I am your wife, or I am not. Which is it? The question hung in the air between them, demanding an answer James was not sure he could give. The tension in the Hartwell mansion became unbearable. James found himself hyper-aware of Emma's every movement. He noticed when she left for meetings with David twice more that week. He noticed the light in her eyes when she talked on the phone about the arts program. He noticed how she had stopped waiting for him at dinner, stopped seeking him out, stopped existing in the hopeful orbit around him that she had maintained for years. And it was destroying him. The breaking point came at a corporate dinner hosted by one of James's major investors. Emma arrived separately, having come from a meeting with David and the program's board members. She wore a burgundy dress that hugged her figure elegantly, her cheeks flushed with excitement from the productive session. James watched her enter the private dining room at Le Bernardin, and every protective, possessive, desperate feeling he had been suppressing roared to life. She was laughing at something David was saying. David, who had somehow appeared at the same event, was guiding her to their table with his hand on the small of her back. The same place James should have been touching her. Before he knew what he was doing, James crossed the room. He did not excuse himself from the conversation he was having. He did not care about the surprised looks from other guests. All he cared about was reaching Emma. There you are, darling. The endearment felt foreign on his tongue but also strangely right. James slipped his arm around Emma's waist and pulled her against his side. The gesture was possessive, deliberate, and utterly unlike him. Emma stiffened in surprise. James, what are you doing? Claiming what is mine. His voice was low, meant only for her ears, but the intensity in his gray eyes made several nearby guests pause their conversations. David, ever the gentleman, stepped back with a knowing smile. I will let you two catch up. Emma, excellent work today. As David walked away, Emma tried to pull free from James's grip, but he held firm. Let me go, she hissed. Dance with me first. What? A string quartet in the corner had begun playing, and several couples were moving to the small dance floor. Without waiting for her agreement, James guided Emma onto the floor, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. You cannot just grab me like I am your property, Emma protested, even as her body instinctively followed his lead. You are not my property. James looked down at her, and Emma saw something raw and vulnerable in his expression. You are my wife. And I have been a fool. They moved together in silence for a moment, the unfamiliar closeness making Emma's heart race. She could feel the heat of his hand through the thin fabric of her dress, could smell the subtle cologne he wore, could see the tension in his jaw. For years, James, she whispered. For years of nothing, and now you want to dance. I want more than a dance. His hand tightened at her waist. I want to rewind time and start over. I want to undo every moment I made you feel invisible. I want to deserve you. Emma's breath caught. Why now? Because David paid attention to me? Because your pride could not handle another man seeing what you refused to see? Yes. The admission seemed to cost him. And no. Yes, seeing Monroe with you made me realize I could lose you. But Emma, I have been fighting this for 4 years. Fighting what you make me feel. What do I make you feel? James pulled her closer as the music swelled. Terrified. Out of control. Vulnerable. Everything I swore I would never feel again after watching my father destroy himself over love. Emma stumbled slightly, and James steadied her. Your father? He loved my mother desperately. She loved his money more. When she left him for someone wealthier, he fell apart. The great Robert Hartwell, reduced to a broken man. I watched him beg her to come back. I watched him drink himself into an early grave. I swore I would never give anyone that power over me. Understanding dawned in Emma's eyes. So you kept me at a distance. I thought if I did not let you in, you could not destroy me. But Emma, the joke is on me. You got in anyway. These past weeks, watching you come alive with Monroe, realizing you were slipping away, it has been torture. I cannot eat, cannot sleep, cannot focus on anything but you. The song ended, but neither of them moved. They stood on the dance floor, surrounded by other couples but existing in their own world. I need more than words, James, Emma said softly. I need you to show me. I need you to let me in, truly in, or I cannot do this anymore. James's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. The gesture was tender, almost reverent, and completely foreign between them. Then let me show you. He kissed her right there, in front of Manhattan's elite, in front of David Monroe, in front of everyone. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate, possessive, full of 4 years of denied desire and suppressed emotion. Emma's hands clutched his jacket, and for a moment, the world fell away. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, James rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me, he whispered. Let me show you everything I should have shown you 4 years ago. Emma looked up at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear, the hope, the desperate need. She knew this was a turning point, that everything would change if she said yes. All right, she breathed. Show me. They left the dinner without excuses or goodbyes. The drive back to the mansion was charged with electricity, James's hand never leaving Emma's. When they entered the house, he led her upstairs, past her bedroom, to his. I want you here, he said. Where you should have been from the beginning. That night, James showed Emma everything he had been holding back. Every touch was a confession, every kiss an apology. He worshipped her body like a man starved, memorizing every curve, every sigh, every shiver. And when they finally came together, it was not just physical. It was 4 years of walls crumbling, of souls finally meeting, of two people choosing to be vulnerable with each other. Afterwards, Emma lay in James's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I am sorry, he whispered into the darkness. For every day I made you feel alone. For every night you cried yourself to sleep thinking you were not enough. You were always enough, Emma. You were always everything. Emma pressed a kiss to his chest. I need you to keep showing me, James. Not just tonight, but every day. I need to know this is real. It is real. He tilted her face up to his. You are the realest thing in my life. And I will spend the rest of our marriage proving it to you. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in 4 years, neither of them slept alone. But when Emma woke the next morning, the bed beside her was cold. James was gone. Emma sat up in the empty bed, the silk sheets pooling around her waist. The morning light filtered through the curtains of James's bedroom, casting shadows across the space where he had held her just hours before. Her heart, which had soared so high the previous night, now plummeted with sickening familiarity. She had been here before. Not in this bed, but in this feeling. The feeling of hope crushed, of reaching out only to grasp emptiness, of believing things could change only to find herself alone again. Emma wrapped herself in James's robe, breathing in the scent of him that still clung to the fabric. She walked to the window and looked out over the manicured grounds of the estate. The gardens were beautiful, perfectly maintained, like everything else in James's world. Controlled. Orderly. Safe. Was that all last night had been? Another moment of losing control before he retreated back behind his walls? She found him an hour later in his study, already dressed in a charcoal suit, his laptop open, phone pressed to his ear. He glanced up when she entered, and something flickered in his eyes before he returned his attention to his call. Emma stood in the doorway, waiting. When James finally ended the conversation, silence stretched between them like a chasm. "You left," Emma said simply. "I had a conference call with Tokyo. It could not wait." His voice was measured, professional. The same tone he had used for 4 years. Of course. Emma felt something inside her harden. Business first. Always business first. "Emma, do not start this." "Start what, James? Expecting my husband to be there when I wake up after we finally make love for the first time in our 4-year marriage? How unreasonable of me." James closed his laptop with more force than necessary. "I told you I had to work. What do you want from me?" The question hung in the air, and Emma realized with sudden clarity that this was the moment. The moment where she either accepted the scraps James was willing to give, or she walked away entirely. "I want a husband," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "Not a business partner. Not a roommate. Not someone who touches me in the dark and then disappears in the morning. I want someone who chooses me, every day, not just when jealousy makes him remember I exist." James stood abruptly. "I am trying, Emma. Do you have any idea how difficult this is for me?" "No, James, I do not. Because you will not let me in. You gave me one night, one beautiful night where I thought maybe we could be real. But here we are again, with you hiding behind your work and me standing here wondering if I imagined it all." "You did not imagine it." His voice cracked slightly. "Then prove it. Not with grand gestures or possessive displays. Prove it by being here. By letting me see the man behind the walls. By trusting that I will not destroy you the way your mother destroyed your father. You do not understand." James turned away from her, staring out the window. "My father was brilliant. Powerful. He built an empire from nothing. And one woman brought it all crashing down. He gave her everything, his heart, his trust, his soul, and she took it all and walked away. I watched him deteriorate day by day. The great Robert Hartwell, begging for scraps of affection from a woman who never loved him." Emma approached slowly, standing beside him. "I am not your mother, James. I know that." His jaw clenched. "But what if I become him? What if I let you in completely and discover I cannot function without you? What if loving you means losing myself? What if it means finding yourself?" Emma touched his arm gently. "What if love does not have to be destruction? What if it could be the thing that makes you stronger instead of weaker?" James looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. "What if I fail you? What if I cannot be the man you need? You are already failing me by not trying." Emma's voice was soft but firm. "Last night, you were everything I needed. You were present, vulnerable, real. That is all I want, James. Not perfection. Just you, honestly and fully. I do not know how to do that." The admission seemed to physically pain him. "Then learn. With me. Let us learn together." Emma took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "But I need to know you are willing to try. Not just when you are jealous or afraid of losing me. Every day, even the boring ones. Even the hard ones. Even when it terrifies you." James pulled her into his arms suddenly, burying his face in her hair. "It terrifies me every moment. The thought of needing you this much. But Emma, the thought of losing you is worse. So much worse." They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the morning light. When they finally pulled apart, Emma looked up at him with eyes that held both hope and wariness. "I cannot do this halfway anymore, James. Either we are really married, or we end this. I deserve more than to be loved only in the dark and ignored in the daylight." "You deserve everything," James said, cupping her face. "And I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to give it to you. But Emma, I need you to be patient with me. I am going to mess up. I am going to retreat sometimes. For years of walls do not come down overnight. I know. But you have to promise me you will try. That when you feel yourself pulling away, you will talk to me instead of shutting me out. I promise." He kissed her forehead. "And I am sorry about this morning. I should have woken you. I should have explained. I should have chosen differently." "You can choose differently tomorrow," Emma said. "And the next day. And the day after that. That is all I am asking for. Daily choices to let me in." The following weeks tested that promise in ways neither of them expected. James did try. He came home for dinner more often. He asked about Emma's work with the arts program. He reached for her hand in public without prompting. But old habits died hard. There were nights he disappeared into his study until dawn. Mornings he was gone before she woke. Moments when she could see him closing off, protecting himself. Each time, Emma called him on it. Gently but firmly. And each time, James fought against his instincts to hide and instead opened up a little more. He told her about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy. About his fear of failure. About the nightmares he still had of watching his father fall apart. Emma shared her own pain. The loneliness of their first years together. The nights she had cried herself to sleep. The slow death of her hope that he might one day love her. They were hard conversations, full of hurt and anger and grief. But they were real. David Monroe noticed the change in Emma when she came to the program offices. There was a lightness to her now, but also a depth that came from walking through fire and surviving. "You seem happy," David observed one afternoon as they reviewed budget proposals. Emma smiled. "I am learning to be. It is not perfect. We have a long way to go. But we are trying." "Good." David's expression was genuinely pleased. "You deserve to be happy, Emma. And if I am being honest, watching you two at that dinner, the way Hartwell looked at you, I knew he was fighting a losing battle against his feelings." "You knew?" "I have been in business long enough to recognize a man terrified of what he wants most." David chuckled. "I may have pushed a little, hoping to wake him up. I hope that was not too presumptuous." Emma laughed. "It worked. Though I am not sure James would thank you for it." "Probably not. But one day he might realize I did him a favor." 3 months after that pivotal night, James surprised Emma by canceling an entire week of meetings. He drove them upstate to a private lake house, miles from the city and all its demands. "What are we doing here?" Emma asked as they pulled up to the charming cabin nestled among pine trees. "Learning to be married," James said simply. "Without the distractions. Without the walls. Just us." The week was a revelation. Without the demands of work and society, they discovered each other in ways they never had before. They cooked meals together, with James proving surprisingly competent in the kitchen. They took long walks through the woods, talking about everything and nothing. They sat by the fire at night, Emma reading while James worked on a laptop, but instead of the silence being empty, it was comfortable. One evening, as they sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink, James turned to Emma with an expression of wonder. "I did not think this was possible," he said quietly. "What?" "Peace. Being with someone and feeling at peace instead of anxious or controlled or afraid." He took her hand. "You were right. Love does not have to be destruction. It can be the thing that builds you up instead of tearing you down." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. We are building something good, James. Something real. I want to do this right. He shifted to face her fully, reaching into his pocket. I know we are already married. I know I already put a ring on your finger 4 years ago. But that was a business transaction. This is different. He opened a small box to reveal a new ring. Not the massive diamond he had given her at their engagement, chosen by a jeweler to impress. This was simpler, more personal. A band of platinum with small emeralds the color of her eyes. Emma Bradford Hartwell, will you marry me? Not for our families. Not for business. Not for appearances. Will you marry me because I love you, because I cannot imagine my life without you, because you make me want to be braver than I am? Tears streamed down Emma's face. Yes. 1,000 times yes. James slipped the new ring onto her finger beside the old one. The old ring represents what we were. This ring represents what we are becoming. Someday, maybe we will only need the new one. But for now, they can exist together, reminding us how far we have come. They made love that night with a tenderness that came from truly knowing each other. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a vow renewed. When Emma woke the next morning, James was beside her, awake and watching her with soft eyes. Good morning, he murmured, brushing hair from her face. You stayed, Emma whispered. I will always stay now. He pulled her close. I am done running from the best thing that ever happened to me. 6 months later, Emma stood in the sunroom of the Hartwell mansion, putting finishing touches on a painting. The room had been transformed into a proper studio, with north-facing windows that James had specifically installed to give her the best light. Her art supplies were organized on custom shelves, and several of her completed works hung on the walls. James appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie after a long day at work. But instead of disappearing into his study as he once would have, he came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. How was your day? He asked, a question that had become ritual between them. Productive. The new arts program launched in 3 more schools today. The response from the kids has been incredible. She leaned back against him. How about yours? Long, tedious. Made better by knowing I was coming home to you. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I have something to tell you. Emma turned in his arms. What is it? I turned down the Singapore expansion project. Her eyes widened. James, that was a huge opportunity. It would have meant 6 months away, flying back and forth every few weeks at best. And Emma, I do not want to do that. I do not want to spend half a year away from you for any amount of money or success. You are more important than any business deal. Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. Are you sure? Completely. His gray eyes held nothing but certainty. I built an empire, but what good is it if I am too busy to enjoy my life? If I miss moments with the woman I love? My father made the mistake of valuing money and power above everything else, and it destroyed him. I will not make the same mistake. I love you, Emma said, the words flowing easily now where once they would have caught in her throat. I love you too. James kissed her deeply. More than I thought possible. More than I knew how to express. But I am learning. We both are. That night at dinner, they sat side by side at the long table that had once felt so empty. Now it felt cozy, intimate, full of possibility. They talked about their days, their dreams, their plans. James reached for her hand frequently, as if he needed the physical reminder that she was real and she was his. After dinner, instead of retreating to separate rooms, they walked through the gardens together under the stars. James told her about a decision he was considering, seeking her advice. Emma shared a challenge she was facing with the arts program, and James offered insights that proved helpful. When they finally went to bed, it was to the master suite they now shared. The room that had once been James's fortress of solitude was now filled with touches of Emma. Her books on the nightstand. her robe hanging beside his in the closet. Photographs of them together, truly happy, on the dresser. As Emma curled into James's embrace, his arms tightening around her protectively, she thought about how far they had come. 4 years of silence and separation. Months of painful growth and difficult conversations. And now, finally, they were building something beautiful from the ashes of what could have been a loveless marriage. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, his voice drowsy. "That I would go through it all again if this is where we end up. We are not ending up anywhere. We are just beginning." He kissed the top of her head. "This is just the start of our story, Emma. The real one." She smiled in the darkness, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Then let us make it a good one." "The best one," James agreed. "I promise you that. Every day for the rest of our lives, I will choose you. I will choose us. I will choose love over fear." And he did. Not perfectly. There were still days when his old walls tried to rebuild themselves. Moments when Emma had to remind him that vulnerability was strength, not weakness. Times when they had to work through conflict and misunderstanding. But they did the work. Together. Because what they had built was worth fighting for. A marriage that began as a contract had transformed into a partnership built on respect, trust, and genuine love. They had learned that real love was not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up every day, choosing each other repeatedly, being willing to be seen in all their flawed humanity and loving each other anyway. 4 years of silence had given way to a lifetime of conversation. 4 years of distance had become intimacy that grew deeper with each passing day. And 4 years of living as strangers had transformed into a love story that neither of them would ever take for granted again. Emma and James Hartwell had finally become what they were always meant to be. Not a business arrangement. Not a society couple playing their parts. But 2 imperfect people who found in each other the courage to be vulnerable, the strength to change, and the wisdom to know that the best love stories are the ones we write through our daily choices to show up, open up, and never stop trying. In the end, they discovered that happily ever after was not a destination but a daily practice. And they practiced it together, hand in hand, heart to heart, for all the years that followed.